All right, all right. Happy Monday. Welcome back to another episode of This Week in Monday. This Week in Money, I got all my stuff falling here. It's all good. We're about to get into this episode. Today, we're talking about unemployment, right? We're talking about what's going on this year with unemployment rates, how they're climbing, how we're at some, we're seeing some of the highest unemployment rates that we've seen in a while. And we're going to talk about if it's something that we should be concerned about, some predictions, a little bit about what's going on in the market. I feel that it's going to be, that we're leading into a bad economic time, Q3, Q4, 2023, and leading into 2020, Q3, Q4, 2023, as well as going into 2024. And so I personally know a lot of people that have been affected so far by what's going on with unemployment. And so we're gonna get into it. We're gonna cover a lot of stuff here tonight. And again, if you're watching, send me some love in the chat. Let me know where you're watching from. Do me a favor and share this because we're gonna share some very powerful information with you this evening. Again, so just to give you guys a little bit of historical context about unemployment, our government actually started tracking unemployment back in the 50s. And although they do have data, using that same data, that same metric that they compiled in the 50s to start tracking unemployment, go back, in previous years and kind of gauge based on statistics what was going on with unemployment, as early as the 1910s, 1920s. So just to give some context about what's happening right now with unemployment and to give some historical perspective. All right. So the worst unemployment that we've ever seen in this country was definitely during the Great Depression. All right. During those early years of the 1930s when we were at an all time high of 24%. Okay. And the lowest unemployment that we've ever had has been during World War II in 1944 when we were at 1.2%. Okay. Because, the world was at war. So whether you wanted to work or not, you were going to be put to work. Every willing, able body had to be put to work. And now, the besides the war though, after World War II, the lowest that we've ever had was back in 1953, which was at 2.9%. Okay, now we're currently at 3.5, and that doesn't seem that high, but I'm going to dive into that number to kind of talk about my perspective on things that I feel that could, escalate that I feel will definitely escalate unemployment in the very near and coming future. And we're going to look at some things that are going on now, as well as we're going to look at some key factors. I'm going to go over a few key factors with you guys that I think are something for us to be mindful of, and I think that it's going to impact what's happening with unemployment at scale as we move here through quarter two of 2023. So, let's talk about what's happened so far. And again, if you're watching this, give me some love in the chat. Let me know where you're watching from. Please share this on whether you're watching this live or you're watching it on replay. Be sure to share this with anyone and everyone that you know, because the information I'm sharing here tonight, I think it's important for people to know what's going on right now in our economy, in our country, and for us to be mindful of this because it's going to affect a lot of people. Now, there's certain technological advances that are happening now that are causing unemployment, and I think they're going to continue to cause unemployment at scale. So let me just talk about real quick the four types of unemployment. Right, there's actually four different types of unemployment. The first one is what's called frictional unemployment, and that's just when people are moving, right? When people are literally moving from, like, they're leaving one job and then but they intend to get another, or they're moving state to state, they're moving around, and so there's a period of maybe 30, 60, 90 days that they're actually unemployed. That's what's known as frictional unemployment. Right, the second type of unemployment is structural unemployment. And that's, we're seeing a little bit of that now, right? Where perhaps jobs move out of the country, right? Where companies shut down local headquarters, local workforce, and decide to outsource their labor to countries like India or China, or just countries where they can get more affordable labor. You also have industries that change. You're seeing this, for example, with the newspaper industry, right? Where I remember growing up, I read a lot of newspapers, but now a lot more people are consuming their content, their information, their news online. Okay, so that type of structural change in the industry is going to cause jobs to be lost and unemployment to rise. And then you have, again, technology, right? AI, different automations, where companies are becoming less reliant on physical labor. All right. So far we have frictional unemployment, structural unemployment. The third kind of unemployment is seasonal unemployment. Okay. So again, holiday seasons, right? Black Friday, Christmas, holidays, where companies are ramping up their employees for the season, for their busy time. But come January, you're not going to have that job. Or perhaps a summer job, right? Where college students, or resorts, summer camps, different things open up, and people are working seasonally. But again, come the fall, those jobs are gone. Or maybe in the farming industry, right? Where farmers have seasons and they need to ramp up labor during a particular season during their harvest. But then again, that drops down over time. And the last kind of unemployment is cyclical. Okay. And this is, what's known as, boom and bust, right? Which is an economic term that talks about, the fluctuation, the ebbs and flows of a capitalistic economy, where you have highs, when people are making money, they're spending money, right? They're hiring more, they're spending money. But then when the market and tightens up, when the economy tightens up, then again, similar to what we're seeing right now, jobs are lost, companies downsize. So let's delve into real quickly what's going on. And I want to talk, as I mentioned, about some factors that that I think are going to lead into what's coming down the pike here in the rest of 2023 and moving into 2024 and beyond. Because there's six factors that I think that we need to be mindful of, in terms of that, are gonna definitely greatly impact what's happening with unemployment. But let's just talk about what's happened so far. Let me have a little bit of this wonderful tea that my wife made me. Ah, delicious. Let's talk about something that's what's happened in just the first few months. Now, I'm gonna mention a lot of companies here, a lot of numbers, so bear with me, because when I was looking at this, even though I was aware of most of it, but as I was compiling this data and doing my research, my brain literally hurt. And I suspect that your brain might literally hurt when you examine, when you look at what's happening right now. So let's just talk about January for a second. Okay. In January, Vimeo, all right, in their second round of layoffs, have laid off 11% of their workforce. Salesforce, almost 8,000 people getting laid off. Crypto lender Genesis Trading, okay, according to the Wall Street Journal, in January, he's laying off 30% of their workforce. Stitch Fix, 20% of their salaried employees. Okay, and this comes after last June, when they laid off another 15% of their salaried employees. Scale AI, 20% of their labor force. Goldman Sachs, over 3,000 members of their labor force. Coinbase, one of the largest crypto companies, 25% of their labor force. Flexport, 20% global labor force. BlackRock, 2.5%. DirecTV, 10,000 people going to be laid off. Crypto.com, 20% of their labor force. Lending Club, 14% of their labor force. Amazon, 18,000 people being let go at Amazon. This is in January. Okay. Microsoft, 10,000. Capital One, 1,100 people. Wayfair, 10%. Google, Google parent Alphabet company, laying off over 12,000 people. Spotify, 8,000 900 full-time employees. 3M laying off 2,500 employees globally. Vacasa, the big real estate company, 17,000 of their workforce. And just to mention a few of the companies, because I can't mention them all: Groupon, SAP, IBM, Hasbro, Philips, PayPal, HarperCollins. This is just in January. This is just in January of 2023. All of the companies that are laying people off. Now let's go into February and March. I'm going to combine these, and there's a lot that I'm going to skip over, but you got FedEx 10%, DraftKings 3.5%, Dell Tech laying off over 6,500 people, Boeing 2,000 people, Zoom 15% of their workforce, Yahoo 1,600, News Corp that owns Wall Street Journal 5%. Okay, Ericsson's 8,500 people, Twitter is laying off in February 10% of his workforce, and this was after reducing their workforce by more than half last year. Okay, we have Citigroup, SiriusXM, Tyson Food, Amazon laid off another 9,000 people in March after laying off 18,000 in January. Okay, Roku, Virgin Orbit, Electronic Arts. Then we go into April. Again, I can't even mention all of the companies. We got McDonald's, Walmart, which just laid off 2,000 people at 5 different plants. Best Buy, David Bridals, okay, losing over 9,000 employees and filing Chapter 11. Ernest Young, 3,000 people. Meta, since November, Meta, Facebook's parent company, has laid off almost 21,000 people. Okay, Whole Foods laying off corporate jobs, Deloitte 1,200, Lyft laying off 1,200 people. This was announced right now in April, and this was after letting 700 people go just 6 months ago. And Disney, okay, they're at about 4,000 layoffs of an announced total 7,000 layoffs. The company BuzzFeed has laid off 15% of their workforce. And mind you, BuzzFeed was very recently valued at over $1 billion, is currently worth a little bit less than $100 million. So there's a lot going on in the market. And I predict, it's just my assertion that this is going to continue to take a downhill turn as we move forward here. So I would love to hear your comments, feedbacks, on this specifically. If you yourself or someone who has been affected by these by this massive unemployment, massive layoffs that have happened, we're at close to 2 million layoffs this year alone, whereas all of 2022 we had about 1.2 million layoffs, and we're close to 2 million already, and we're just into the second quarter of this year. Now, that's massive. Okay, now let me talk about the 6 factors that I mentioned, which I think that people need to be aware of when it comes to the reasons that I mentioned that I believe, going to see a massive spike in unemployment here as we move forward. Now, one thing that we just came off of 3 years ago was a record 128-month economic expansion between June 2009 and February 2020. We had a record 128 months economic expansion. For those that don't know, economic expansion is basically when the GDP continues to grow, continues to peak for 2 or more consecutive quarters. All right. So for a long period of time, 10 and a half years, basically, the economy was growing. Okay. And then we all know what happened in early 2020 that obviously affected our economy greatly, right? Everyone got a lot of people were deemed non-essential employees, got sent home with a pink slip for 2 weeks to up to 2 years. All right. So that's one thing that we need to be mindful of. Now, the second thing, as I just mentioned, what happened in 2020, okay, when we had this massive health global crisis. Okay, this is another key factor. And, just for the record, that's the largest health pandemic that we've had in over 100 years. The last one was the influenza pandemic that we had back in 1918. Okay. Now, key factor number 3, we have trillions of dollars being printed and pumped into our economy. In fact, half of the money in our economy today, half of it or more, okay, has been printed in just the last 2.5 years. That has never, ever happened before. Okay. And the more money gets printed, the more inflation goes up. Okay. The more money gets printed, the more inflation goes up. And why is that relevant? All right. Why is that relevant? Because you see, there's this thing called the Phillips curve. All right. And the Phillips curve is this: the higher the inflation, the lower unemployment. Okay. But then there's an inverse to that, which means that as inflation goes down, unemployment historically goes up. And what is the government claiming to be doing right now? That is to get inflation under control. And generally, people want inflation to go down because when things are inflated, it means that your money is worth less. It means that instead of gas being $2 a gallon, it's $4 a gallon. Instead of eggs being $3 a dozen, they're 5, 6, 7, 8, $9 a dozen. So in general, we do want inflation to go down. However, that causes historically unemployment to go up. So key factor number 4, okay? In 2022, last year, the Fed basically increased, the Federal Reserve increased interest rates 7 times. Okay? 7 times. The last time that they did that was back in 2008. And for the record is 8 times back in 2005. Now, key factor number 5, the Great Resignation, right? People were leaving their jobs, okay? Not wanting to deal with the regulations and mandates that came along with the health crisis of 2020. People were, basically not wanting to work, and as a result, for companies to even find labor, they had to overpay. So a job that traditionally paid 50, 60,000, now employers were offering 70, 80,000 for that same job. Right? Jobs that normally paid 100,000, employers were offering 130, $150,000 for that same job. Okay. And, over time, that's going to balance out because it's going to get to a point that employers know that they can't afford to pay those salaries, but that's what they had to do during that time because they couldn't properly staff. And then the last key factor is, the population migration. All right. Basically, we've had in 2022, we had the lowest population in California since 1851. Think about that. It's the first time that the population has gone down since 1851, since the gold rush. Okay, people left California in droves. Over 333,000 people left New York City since March 2020. Okay. The population in Chicago, another major city, is also down. People are fleeing to places like Florida, Texas, okay, states that have been more quote unquote open, all right, have better tax rates. So there's a lot going on. And these factors are important for us to be mindful of because they play a big role. They play a big role in what I think is coming down the pike with what I expect to be even more unemployment. So again, just some factors for us to be mindful of. Now, we won't be here long, but I just want to give some more data because again, we talked about these unemployment rates, what's going on, and a lot of people don't even know how the Bureau of Labor Statistics actually arrives at these rates of unemployment. Okay, so they actually have 6 ways that they measure unemployment. Okay, U1, U2, U3, all the way down to 6 ways, and I'm going to cover those real quickly. So U1 is when someone's been unemployed for 15 weeks or longer. Okay, U2 is when someone has either completed some type of temporary work or is just recently unemployed. Now, U3, which is the most popular that we hear about all the time. So when I mentioned that current unemployment rate is 3.5, that's the U3 number. Okay, that's the official unemployment rate. And the way that they get that is a couple of ways. Okay, they have a couple of surveys that they conduct. One survey is an establishment survey where they survey employers to see the size of their payroll, and the other survey is a consumer survey where they survey approximately 60,000 households to kind of gauge where people are in terms of either being employed or looking for work. Now, I don't know why they use that number, but that's just the way they work. And they use that to create this equation that's basically unemployed divided by labor force times 100. And that's how they get that U3 unemployment rate. That's the most popular rate that the Bureau of Labor Statistics releases every month that people, lean on. The next one is U4. That's U3 plus discouraged workers, okay, who have given up on looking for work because they think there's nothing out there. U5 is U3 plus U4 plus marginally employed labor people who haven't really looked for work recently. And the last one, U6, and that's U3, U4, U5, plus part-time or underemployed people who wants full-time work but can't seem to get it for some sort of economic reason. And so some people might hear that the unemployment rate is actually 7.3. That would be the U6 number. So that's sometimes those numbers get confused. Okay. Now, I know that's a lot of information. I know your brain must be hurting. Like I mentioned, my brain was hurting, just kind of, again, a lot of this, I was aware of, I've been abreast of, and I've been monitoring, which is why I wanted to talk about this tonight, what's going on. But, not to be grim, I want to talk a little bit about for people who are out there who are either concerned that the company that they are with might continue to do cuts or might start cutting the workforce, and you're concerned about your potential job loss. I want to talk about very briefly what you can do. Okay. And I just want to talk about some opportunities that exist here. Even having analyzed these numbers, everything that's going on. So, companies are downsizing. Companies are laying people off. The way my brain functions, baby, you what? Yeah. I don't know. I don't even know what I said. My brain hurts. But, companies are obviously going to downsize. That's not something that employees can control. Okay? Companies are going to do what they have to do to continue to show a profit, to continue to satisfy their shareholders. So if a company plans to downsize and jobs are going to be lost, that's not something that we can stop. Okay. So if you're in a company that has been downsized, and one of these companies that I mentioned, or a different company that I didn't even mention, these are the bigger ones that I've mentioned, the ones that we know most about, and you're concerned, what I can tell you is this: number one, they're not getting rid of anybody. Okay. Many people will have a job, be secure, be, unfireable. And who are those people? Those are the employees who bring the most value. Okay. Those are the people who are good employees, who contribute positively to the work, to the productivity of the company, as well as the environment and workforce dynamic. Okay. If you're someone who's constantly improving your skills and making yourself more valuable, all right, you're probably going to be fine. You're probably going to be secure. You see, because you have people that that are constantly reinventing themselves, that are constantly working and improving on themselves, right? You have actually kind of three kinds of people. One type of person never really improves on themselves, right? They show up to work, they do the same thing, they don't really add anything of value. They have to be given instructions. You give them instructions, they can do their job, but they don't have any ideas to contribute. They don't have any ideas on how to make things more efficient, how to be more productive. They just go through the motions, they watch the clock, and they expect a check every week. All right. So if you're that type of employee, you might want to be concerned with what's happening. Okay. The second type of employee or person is a type of person that every so often reinvents themselves, learns a new skill. Okay. And this usually happens because perhaps something bad happened. Maybe you got let go of a job and you go into a different sector, and now you have to learn a particular skill to get into that sector. But once you do that, you go back to homeostasis. You don't continue to improve. You don't continue to further develop yourself. And so you wind up being like that number one again, where you just kind of, waddle. All right. Until there's some type of change, and then you find yourself as someone that's expendable. Okay. And the last type of person, the third type of person, is someone who's always reinventing themselves, someone who's always learning new things, who's committed to staying up on technology, on and I'm talking about from a professional acumen standpoint. Okay, I'm not talking about just someone who's up on current events and can gossip and water cooler talk to you about what's going on in the world of politics or pop culture. I'm talking about someone who's always improving themselves in terms of skills, communication, leadership skills, technical skills that are directly applicable to their job, career, or upward mobility. Okay. If they want to progress in the company. All right. I know people, I have a good friend of mine that she started in the healthcare industry about 20 years ago, and she came here from another country. She started working for one of the biggest health groups in New York City, in Scarsdale, and she started off as an executive assistant. And within 2 years, she was an executive director. Okay, people like that will never be expendable. Okay, because they're always improving themselves. They're always adding more value and making themselves necessary to the employer. In fact, those are the type of people that when they leave their job, the employer throws money at them, begging them to stay on. Okay. So if you're the third type of person, you're probably safe. Okay. You're probably safe. And the reason I say probably is because sometimes cuts are financial, right? So if you have that upward mobility, if you're so highly skilled, right, you might price yourself out of your job, right? Because the company might decide, okay, the easiest way for us to reduce labor is to tackle some, like I mentioned, there's companies that are reducing hundreds of their corporate leadership positions. Okay, so I'm not saying that it's just a low level or lower paid employees that are at risk. Anybody can be at risk. I'm just saying that if you have more skills and you commit yourself to always developing yourself personally and professionally, then you have the best chance of being retained by your company when and if they decide to downsize, or when and if employment rates spike across the board. Because like I mentioned, there's a bunch of factors that contribute to this, right? We talked about technology, automation, AI, all these things that are happening, you know, that are making a lot of positions, irrelevant. I always talk about the the I always use this analogy of the Pony Express. Okay. Back, 100 plus years ago, when the steam engine was created, right? And we started having trains and automobiles and eventually planes. There were thousands and thousands and thousands of people who worked for the Pony Express, right? For the post office. And every night they get on a horse and they ride out to wherever they had to ride out to deliver mail. But when technology advanced and developed, and we started having, the cars and trains, thousands of people found themselves obsolete right? From an employment standpoint, from what they had done as a career. So what they had to do, pivot, learn new skill, go to another sector of the workforce. And you see that now with AI, you see that with technology, right? I remember a few years ago, fast food workers were, were in a fight with Congress and the government for increased minimum wage. Okay. And then finally they got those increased minimum wages, right? And then what happened? I remember when I was a kid, I would go into McDonald's and there was like 8 cashier registers. All right. And there was a line on every one. Okay. If not and now people are ordering their food in advance on their app, either having it delivered or walking in and just picking it up. Or if you do go into most fast food establishments, they have all these self-serve kiosks where you place your own order, and they might have one actual cashier for someone who's either paying cash or can't use the self-service kiosk. But I predict that there's going to come a time when that will also be phased out. So we're seeing it right before our eyes. Now, another opportunity, if you're a highly skilled employee, because like as I just mentioned, some of the high skilled people that do have a lot of value still might be let go. Okay. So if you're an entrepreneur, this might be a great opportunity for you to pick up some amazing talent, right? Because some highly skilled people will be let go. Or if you're someone that's always wanted to be entrepreneurial, wanted to start your own business, and you spent your last 5, 10, 15 years building up another company, now might be a great time for you to go into business for yourself. So while the future is grim in terms of what's happening right now and over the next 18, 24 months with unemployment, in my opinion, I also believe that there's lots and lots and lots of opportunity. Now, will everyone be able to take advantage of that opportunity? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. All right. Because the truth is that many people are just going through the motions, going to work every day, reading the paper, seeing what's happening, but hoping that they're safe. As I've always said, hope is not a strategy. Okay. And that's why I'm making this video. That's why I do these lives, right? And that's why I implore you, whenever you're watching this, if you're watching this live, if you're watching this on replay, I implore you to share this on every single platform possible. All right. Because I already know that hundreds of thousands, millions of people have already been affected by this massive unemployment, and even more going to continue to be affected as we move forward. All right. So, guys, thank you for joining me on this episode of This Week in Money. I will be back here next Monday with a new topic. And I would love to know from you. Leave it in the comments below on whatever platform you are watching on. Leave it in the comments below what areas you would like to hear me discuss in the world of finance, economics, money. If you have specific questions, specific things that you see that you're curious about, that you want more information on, I will be happy to cover that. It might be next week, if not very soon. I'm going to have a episode where I'm talking about taxes. And so stay tuned for that. But again, I appreciate you guys for tuning in. My lovely wife always being my cheerleader. I love you. Until then, I see you guys next Monday for another episode of This Week in Money. I'm your host, Jose Gonzalez, aka Mr. Wealth Mindset. Peace out.